Hello, and welcome to this second video on planning. I call this video Putting a Language Lesson Together. And the learning outcome, what you should be able to do after watching this video, is what it says there. You and your peers should be able to write visible language learning outcomes, expressed as functions, and decide on the structure, the form of a language lesson. You will do this working in groups so that all your students can learn the selected function. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to review some of the things you may have read during the readings for this unit. For example, the ESA model. Then we consider where we start. We start with the learning outcomes, but then what do we do? And then what happens? And then the final thing will be to recap different types of lessons. Of course, this will have to be done in groups on Schoology. So let's refer to the work of Jeremy Harmer. Jeremy Harmer is a teacher educator, very well known because he wrote a book called The Practice of English Language Teaching way back in the 80s, and he has been re-editing that book for many years. In another book he wrote called How to Teach English, he gives us 3 possible components of a lesson. He says that in every lesson, there are 3 things that teachers and students can do. The first one is what he calls engage, right? Those are activities to motivate the students to bring them into the lesson. Then there is the study, when the teacher helps the students focus on the language and how the language works. That is very controlled. The teacher knows exactly what the students are going to say. The teacher provides explanations, etc. And then there is the activate, when students use what they have learned freely. If we give a description at the engage phase, you activate students' background knowledge. We know that what students already know determines whether they understand or not. We tell the students at the engage phase what the learning outcomes for the day are, and you orient the students towards the lessons. You tell them what they are going to be doing. Why? Because this somehow gives the students perspective on what they are going to do. In terms of study, what happens there? We do something called focus on form, that is to say, language study. We give the students instruction in vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. We also do exercises to practice the language. And through eliciting, which is guiding the students, not teaching explicitly, but guiding the students to discover how language works, we could do clarifying or discovering new language activities. Activate, the name says it all, right? Students engage in communication. They don't do exercises, they do tasks, right? And you focus on free expression. Is any language that students have at their disposal that they will use for communication, not to repeat what the teacher wants them to do. So where do we start? We saw in the previous video that we start with the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes tell us what our objectives are for the day. They tell us what students are supposed to be able to do at the end of a lesson, right? So where do you start with this? As we said, the first thing you should do is select a language function, right? That is what learners do. A function is something students do. I have given you again the same list of functions that I showed you in the previous video. Select one that the students need to learn, and you start there. Where do we go next? We decide what students should do with a function, because knowing what they are going to do is one thing, but doing it is another thing. And we have to look at how much we want them to get engaged. Do we want them just to know things? So maybe you can provide them with a list of vocabulary and they have to illustrate it or define it, etc. Or if you want them to check whether they understood, they compare, they classify, they contrast, they infer, so forth and so on. Each of these levels of thinking goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So when we get to the create, the students are using everything they know to provide something new. But what do you want them to do with that function? If you want them to understand, you're going to focus on listening and reading. If you want them to move on into apply and create, you may have to use speaking and writing. And then what do you do with these learning outcomes? Well, you write them in a way that it's completely unambiguous. And you use the ABCD formula that we discussed, where A stands for audience. For example, the students, all the students who do not study English privately, you may segment those students. B is the behavior. Use a verb from the taxonomy we had just seen, and it must be a verb that you can observe. For example, you want them, the learning outcome is by the end of the lesson, students should understand a short story. Understand or know are very general verbs. They don't communicate exactly what students are going to do. So if you focus on understanding, students will be able to describe 3 of the characters and say how they are related. It's much clearer than saying they will know the characters or they will understand who the characters are. So use verbs that you can observe because we are going to use them to assess. C has to do with the conditions, whether they work individually, in pairs, in groups, orally, or in writing. And D is the degree. This is a tricky one because how do you gauge the degree? To which level of success? So you can say towards the end of the lesson, you can say a number of things that students should be able to say, how correct the production needs to be. So once you have that decided, you need to think in terms of how you are going to organize what students are going to do. Now, remember, you are just planning, you are organizing. It doesn't mean that the lesson is going to work according to your plan. It might or it might not. We have to remember that. Again, talking about Jeremy Harmer, he tells us that he distinguishes 3 kinds of lessons, which he calls straight arrow, boomerang, or patchwork. What is a straight arrow lesson? It's a lesson where students need to learn some language explicitly. When they ask you, but teacher, how do you really say it? What is the correct way? So you go from presenting to practicing to getting them to produce. It's very safe for teachers. It's very easy to plan. However, it needs creativity to contextualize the language. A straight arrow lesson does not start with, este es el presente simple, and this is how you use it. No, you create a context. We're going to see that in a minute. The other name that the straight arrow lesson has is presentation practice production. Now, as you see, the students are given some language in context. They, with the help of the teacher, discover how the language works, and then they need to practice. Once they practice, they produce. The boomerang lesson is slightly different. It is ideal when students have to engage in communication and at the same time learn new language. It does require extra work for teachers. It's a little bit more difficult to come up with a good boomerang lesson. And it needs creativity to provide the focus on form, because what happens in a boomerang lesson is you give students an opportunity to communicate, and then you teach them the language at the point of need. After they have communicated, you make a diagnosis of what language they need, and only then do you teach them that language, but you cannot anticipate what language is needed. Another name for this is task-based learning, and we're going to devote one particular session to task-based learning. So if we go to the ESA, we would say that a straight arrow lesson is engage, study, activate. Remember the three. A boomerang lesson is engage, activate, study, activate. So first the students communicate, then you explain the language, and then they try to communicate again. Harmer talks about another kind of lesson, which he calls patchwork lessons, right? And these are ideal when you are going to do many different things, working the 4 skills. It does require creativity to come up with motivating and productive activities. But even though they may look as though it does not have a clear structure, it does follow. If you follow the methodology, it does have a clear structure. Now, if you're going to work on your language, this kind of lessons is not advisable because they tend to be very messy. What type of lesson and which learning outcomes? Here, I'm going to show you the straight arrow, the boomerang, and the patchwork lesson, how they can be put into a learning outcome. I'm just going to give you a minute to read these 3 learning outcomes. And what I would like you to do is to think which is the outcome for a straight arrow lesson, which is the outcome for a boomerang lesson, and which is the outcome for a patchwork lesson. You can stop the video now if you want. Have you thought about it? Okay. Which is the outcome for a straight arrow lesson? I would say it's B, because you can see that the learners learn how to talk about habits in the past. They discuss the habits in general that they have between the ages of 9 and 12, sorry. Then they write 10 sentence paragraph individually, but they're going to share it with another student. So there's presentation, there's practice, and then they discuss and identify one similarity and one difference between their past habits. That's production. A boomerang lesson is C. They select 10 ingredients from a list of 20, and they talk to a friend, a peer, to agree on a healthy menu using those 10, working in groups. This, of course, is communication from the beginning, is engage, activate. Then after they present their healthy menus, you can look at the language that they need, teach it, practice, and they do another task. And the patchwork lesson is A, evidently, because they have a story, they identify different elements, they work in groups, they fill in a graphic organizer, and then they write a short paragraph. As you can see, the functions are different, the lessons are different, and what we want the students to do is different. So let's look at what we can do in a lesson. Here is a demonstration lesson from a teacher training course. I want you to look at it. It's not very long, right? It's a demo lesson. And to identify whether it is a straight arrow lesson, a boomerang lesson, or a patchwork lesson.
Hello, my name's Matthew. Can everybody say, hello, Matthew? How are you today? Are you happy? Or are you sad? Are you happy? Or are you sad? You're happy! Great! Well, that means we're going to have a great day. Okay, we're going to do a little warm-up. Can everybody stand up? And sit down. And stand up. And sit down. And stand up. Stand up. And sit down. And stand up. And spin around. Great. Okay, we're all warm and ready to go. So today we're going to learn about colours. Now, does anybody know any of these colours? You know some colours? No? Okay. We'll start with this colour. Red. This is the colour red. Red. This is the colour red. Repeat after me. Red. 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 Well done. Now this is the colour yellow. This is the colour yellow. Yellow. Can everyone say yellow? Yellow. Fantastic. Well done. Brilliant. Okay. Now the next colour is green. Can everybody say green? Green. One more time. Green. Fantastic. Brilliant. And the last one is blue. Can everybody say blue? Blue. Fantastic. All right. So I like the colour red. I like red. What colour do you like? What colour do you like? Again, I like red. I like red. Okay, what colour do you like? You like yellow. Brilliant. You like yellow. Fantastic. Well done. Well done. What colour do you like? I like green. Brilliant. You like green. Fantastic. One more time. Who's next? I like red. You like red. Red. Fantastic. I like red. Brilliant. Well done, guys. Well done. Okay. Now, what colour is this? Anybody know? What colour is this? This is an apple, and the apple is red. This is a red apple. A red apple. Everybody say red apple. One more time. Red apple. Fantastic. Well done. And now we've got a broccoli. Does everybody know what a broccoli is? It's a vegetable, but it is... What colour is the broccoli? Yes, that's right. It's a red broccoli. It's a red broccoli. What's that? No, it's not. No, what colour is it? Green. That's right. Well done. It's a green broccoli. Fantastic. Well done. Brilliant. Okay, the next one is a banana. We all know what a banana is. This is a yellow banana. A yellow banana. The banana is yellow. Now, which colour is the yellow banana? There we go. Yellow banana. Is that right? No? Yellow banana. That's right. Well done. Very close. Yellow banana. The banana is yellow. Brilliant. Okie dokie. And the last one. Blueberries. The blueberries are blue. The blueberries are blue. Fantastic. So there we go. Some nice blue blueberries. Is that right? No, that's not right. Okay, right. Well, there we go. It's a blue blueberry. Well done, guys. You got it. You're getting there. Really good. Great. Okie dokie. Now, we're going to sing a little song so we remember the colours better. Are we ready? Red and yellow and green and blue. Red and yellow and green and blue. Red and yellow and green and blue. We've got red, yellow, green and blue. Red, yellow, green and blue. One more time. Red, yellow, green and blue. Red, yellow, green green, and blue. Brilliant, well done. So we're going to test you now. What colour is this? What is it? Green. Fantastic, well done. What colour is this? No, that's red. Fantastic. What about this one? Yellow. Brilliant. What about this one? Yes, that's right. It's blue. Fantastic. Great. You guys have done fantastic today. So now we're going to have a little craft time and we're going to make our very own Chinese lanterns. Now, before we make the Chinese lanterns, you have to pick your favourite colour from today's lesson. Okie dokie. So, who wants the green colour? Who wants the green? You want the green? Okay. But now, who wants this colour? You have to tell me what it is. That's right, it's blue. There you go. Fantastic. Who wants this colour? You want this colour? What is it? Yellow. That's right, it's yellow. Fantastic. Well done. And last but not least, we've got this colour. Who wants to make their Chinese lantern from this colour? What is it? That's right, it's red. Brilliant. Fantastic. Well done, guys. Thank you for watching my demo. Thanks for watching. Hello, my name's Matthew.
Okay, as you can see, this is a very straight arrow lesson. The teacher presents the colors, then he does a lot of repetition activities, and supposedly at the end of the lesson, the students will produce by describing the Chinese lantern. Say, my Chinese lantern is blue or green or yellow. So now let's look at specifically at what things we can do to engage the students in the lesson. First thing I want you to do is to explain the learning outcome. Say, even if it is to be done in Spanish, I don't care, but say what we're going to try and achieve today. And ask them, do you know how to do this in English? Well, today you're going to learn about how to do it in English. Then present the agenda. The agenda gives the students some certainty. It gives us a sense of progression during the lesson. And more importantly, towards the end of the lesson, we can go back to the agenda and do revision and make sure that we are assessing that the students have learned. Then introduce the topic. You can introduce a topic through a guessing game, through unveiling a picture, through keywords. The idea is to make the introduction to the topic interesting, so that students, you can play hangman if you want, right? And then you activate students' background knowledge. Ask them, what do you know about this topic? Do you know any vocabulary? What have you seen about this topic before, right? And if they say things in Spanish, you provide the English version. And last but not least, remember that you should keep your teacher talking time to a minimum, not like this teacher we have just seen who talked a lot. Of course, he didn't have students present, right? But all these very well, hey, great, wonderful, well, that is not necessary. Students know if they are doing things well or not, and you just give a thumbs up and that is enough, right? So at the engage phase, we have to send the message, we're here to learn English and to use English. So promote student talking time. These are some strategies that you can use. The guessing games, as I said, bringing a mystery object inside a bag and asking the students to touch it and discover connected to the topic, right? The progressive picture reveal. Start drawing something like just a curve and then another part of the drawing until they discover what it is. The famous Chinese whispers, where you give the student in the first row a word, you whisper it, and they have to whisper that word around to the end of the line, to the end of the circle. And then with those words you whispered, they have to discover the topic. The brainstorming, tell me everything you know about this topic, and you write it on the board. You can do 2 truths and a lie. If you see that the students are not producing anything at this stage, you say, okay, I'm going to say 3 sentences. about the topic today. 2 of them are true, and 1 is a lie. Can you spot the lie? You can use cartoons, you can use memes, right? Pictures, just audio, or video. All these are activities that help you engage the students in the lesson. And when I go to see your class, I expect you to use some of these activities at the beginning of the lesson. In general, engage happens at the beginning of the lesson because that's when you want to pull the students into the lesson, right? With study and activate, we can vary the place in the lesson. So let's look at some study phases. The important thing here is that language is contextualized and is meaningful. You need to create a context, a little story, an anecdote where the new language is used naturally, right? You can tell an anecdote about yourself, and we're going to see other activities. Then, if you have pictures like this teacher used, you can elicit, you can use concept questions or discovery activities. You will all find these in lessons learned in the part called putting it all together. And I expect you to be able to learn from the examples there. The important thing here is that students make form meaning connections, but the connection is made only when they know the meaning. So we start by, when you have to explain the language, you explain it by starting with the use. When do we use this language? That is to say, the function. You see how the function works. Then concentrate on the meaning, right? So we are here talking about the present, the past, or the future. Oh, we're talking about the past. But do we talk about activities we did once in the past? So that is the use, right? Now we're moving to the meaning. Oh, used to, I used to do this, I didn't used to do that. Oh, that is what? Habits in the past, more than once, that's the meaning. Now, listen to how I pronounce. It's not you said to, it's used to, used to, used to. Repeat, used to, used to. And then you say, okay, now let's give me a word, a sentence with the words used to about that is true about yourselves. You write it on the board and you explain the form. But this is the order in which you should teach it. You cannot start with this is the form, because then it doesn't register. You have to lead the students to work on meaning. Make sure that some of this explanation is written on the board, right? And even if you feel that you're wasting time, it's important that you ask the students to copy that, because that is what the only register they're going to have of this lesson. And that is what they're going to use to study in the future. Don't forget to practice, and practice some more. Give the students exercises that go from the more controlled to the least controlled. And then when correcting these exercises, and I want to see this in action when I see you, first time you check the correct answer. Okay, I can give you the answer for number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, right? Then ask the student to cover that exercise or activity so that they cannot see it, and force them to recall, right? If I used to, what did I used to eat when I was 12? Was it watermelon, melon, or peaches, right? Say we have said that. So that forces them to recall. And last, personalize the exercise. Okay, what was your favorite food when you were 12, right? It's when the students talk about themselves, their friends, and their reality that they have an opportunity to appropriate the language. The activities are all these: recognition activities, something very simple, like I'm going to say 2 sentences. Choose the one that talks about a habit in the past. I went to school by bus. I used to go to school by bus, which shows the habit in the past, right? I lived in 33. I used to go to school by bike. Then there's drills. Drills are repetition exercises like this teacher did, the one we saw. There's imitation, there's repetition, there's creating a rhythm. Why? Because we need to get them to use the language in a very controlled way for pronunciation purposes. If they don't know how to pronounce it, since English is written differently from the way it's pronounced, they are not going to like to talk in class. Use brief responses, true or false, fill in the blanks, order the words in a sentence, expand words into a sentence, describe pictures. All these things are very controlled. You know exactly what you want them to practice. Then go to personalization. From there, go to sentence completion. You either give them the beginning or end of sentences or dialogues for them to complete. And then guided communication activities. You present a short situation, show a picture, or give groups of words or a quotation, and students make sentences using the new language. All these are practice activities that go from the very controlled to the more communicative, and they need to progress through all the stages to be able to use the language after that. And then the moment has come to activate the language that they have learned, right? What happens at the activate phase of the lesson? Students do tasks. That is to say, they use any language that they have at their disposal to bridge a gap that could be information. One student has some information, the other one doesn't. Or it could be an opinion gap. They have to agree or disagree. Or a reasoning gap. They have to solve a problem. This is definitely not an exercise because you don't know exactly what language students are going to use. But this gives them the freedom to experiment with the language, to test the hypothesis that they have. How do you prepare them for a task? Well, by activating vocabulary about the topic, mostly vocabulary, right? And then having them work in pairs or small groups so that they do the task, like finding similarities and differences between two stories, two pictures, etc. Ranking their favorite food from their favorite food to the least favorite. Those are tasks. And when they are doing this, do not interrupt them if they make mistakes. Why? Because you want them to communicate with any language at their disposal. So make a note of the language that you need to teach. And then after the students have presented the results of the task, then you teach language at the point of need. Before you get the groups to show what they have done, you have to give them time to prepare and rehearse. These are two important words, prepare and rehearse. And then they report to the end of the class. Well, one group is reporting, the others have to have a purpose for listening to that group. So one thing could be, if you ask them to make a list of things, cross out all the things in your list that your friends are talking about, right? So that then when your turn comes, you only talk about the things that are in your list. Or find one similarity and one difference between what this group did and your group. And last, there are a few activities that we can do here. This is a typology of tasks, and that comes from the work of Jane Willis. A task is different from an activity in that the purpose is communication, it's not language practice. That is the biggest thing. The other thing is tasks are less controlled than activities or exercises. In an exercise or activity, you know exactly what the answer is going to be. There is a right or wrong answer. In a task, students use any language at their disposal, right? And the language may be broken, maybe half Spanish, half English, but the idea is they are trying to communicate. You can ask them to make lists, to brainstorm around a topic, to sequence information, or rank or classify. You could ask them to match captions and pictures match texts and pictures, or recorded extracts to pictures, short notes or headlines to longer text. Other forms of matching, right? Like, for example, you have a description of a place and the description of 4 people who have different likes and dislikes. Which of these people is best to go to this place, given the likes and dislikes. Then we have finding similarities and differences and problem solving. And last but not least, and this is what students really like to do, sharing personal experiences. Have you ever been rollerblading or roller skating? Right? And what did you like about it? What didn't? Tell me about a time when you went, when you rode a motorcycle, etc. Right? As you can see, these 3 very simple tags of engage, study, and activate give us a lot of food for thought when planning a lesson. And they give you, hopefully, a lot of information to be able to plan an interactive lesson for your students. Here I have for you, just as a wrap-up, what kind of activate task and what kind of gap, right? We have the 6 kind of tasks and a description. So now I'm going to stop the video and give you some time for you to think and match. As you can see, listing and brainstorming is F. Sequencing, writing, or classifying is E. Matching is D. Finding similarities is B. Problem solving is A. And sharing personal experiences is C. As you can see, what students are doing in all these tasks, right, is trying to use the language that they are learning. And that language may be incomplete, may be broken. They may be asking you, how do you say this, teacher? How do you say the other? If you give them support, they're going to dare use the language and literally acquire it. So before we go, the outcome for today was you should be able to write visible language learning outcomes expressed as functions and decide on the structure of a language lesson. You're going to be working in groups. So when you go to CREA, to Schoology, you will find that I have made the groups already. And you have to work together to create a sample lesson. That is what we're going to do. Okay? So I hope that you find this video, which is very long, but it's informative. And I look forward to seeing you very, very, very soon. Bye-bye.